Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
National interest this week stays with national politics, because you know what? One good thing about politics, in fact the best thing about politics, is it never freezes. Because if it froze, then what will happen to people like us, lifelong commentators? We'll either have to take sannyas or learn to play golf in our old age and spend all our days on the golf course. Actually, it's the same thing as taking sannyas as far as I'm concerned. So politics is not like that. And some fascinating things are happening in our politics, while it looks like a lot is frozen. So I lift those layers and look at what's happening underneath what looks like a frozen surface of a lake. There is a lot of activity underneath. Now, but before I go there, my monthly reminder to you, time for you to renew your paid subscriptions to the print. If you haven't taken one, please take it. It takes us a lot of doing, costs us a lot of money to keep the print going and to build it and to give you high quality journalism. We can print, the print can print great journalism in whatever medium, but we cannot print money, right? You have to pay the money to keep us going. Why? Because good journalism is good for you. All of us have a stake in India's democracy, free speech, and there is no democracy or free speech without good journalism. And there is no good journalism unless good people pay for it. So this is my periodic call to you. Please pay, take a paid subscription to the print. Back to politics now. Now, let me tell you at the very outset, what is frozen with our politics and what is on the boil. Because these two things may look very different, and you might think on the surface कि एक का दूसरे से connection क्या है? What connection does one have with the other? But actually it's a very close connection, and I will tell you. So what is it that looks frozen? What looks frozen is Narendra Modi's unassailability, his impregnability, that he is now unchallengeable, impregnable, unassailable. The expression we've used in the past about him, and I will repeat that again, is cast in titanium. Not Teflon coated, cast in titanium. जिसको कोई तोड़ नहीं सकता. Nobody can dent it, nobody can break it, nothing happens, it won't rust, nothing will happen. So that looks like he is quite secure in that area. So that is how the situation looks a bit frozen. Now, if that part of the politics is frozen, that means the core of India's politics is frozen, then what else is there to talk about? Now, there is one side of politics which is on the boil, and that side is the opposition. So there is a lot on the opposition side that's on the boil, and we will go deep into that. And once again, you might say that, look, ruling party in its popularity and control is frozen, the opposition is on the boil, even better for the ruling party. End of story. What are you talking about? How will you explain this in 1200 words? So Indian politics is very fascinating and very complex. It's very complex because sometimes we don't know how one affects the other. And that is why it becomes so addictive for people like us to study national politics. Now you want to look at the evidence of why we say that politics, as far as Narendra Modi's popularity or his preeminence in national politics is concerned, is frozen. The latest India Today opinion poll, India Today Mood of the Nation opinion poll, which was seen as a setback to him because he was seen to have lost a bunch of seats, a couple of scores of seats, which is not a few, but still he ended up very close to the halfway mark of 272. More importantly, his main rival, which is the UPA, Congress-led UPA, was still languishing at just over 100. So that confirms our first proposition that politics, as far as his preeminence, his invincibility is concerned, is frozen. That's a reality today, but only if you freeze this moment. Now, in politics, no moments remain frozen, as say in a game of cricket. Now, think of him right now. So think of Narendra Modi's and BJP's situation like that of a team which is 200 for 2 in 40 overs and has to get 30 more runs, which means 30 more runs in 60 balls, 60 deliveries in an ODI. So big deal. All you have to do is not do anything silly. Play out your 10 overs. If you play out your full overs, you will win the match. You, however, also know that many of those matches go wrong. What is it that could go wrong, say, in this case? Because everything seems to be set for 2024 at the exact halfway point of NDA 2, of Narendra Modi's second term. That Modi isn't that kind of a player who will go smug now and ठीक है अब टुक करते हैं in 10 overs. We will win nevertheless. He's not that kind of a player. And that you can see from the flurry of activity that he and his party are making right now. So you see there is a 2.0 version of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan launched. The talk is about clearing these mountains of garbage from our cities. Now, I know more about Delhi, so I know my Bhalaswa and Ghazipur. The shame of Delhi, these big mountains of garbage. But I'm sure every city in the country has its own version of the garbage Himalayas or garbage Aravalis or garbage Satpuras or the Ghats. And they'll be very happy to get rid of them. Now, if just as a Dilliwala, if these mountains were to disappear in the next 2 years, it will be something which will work very well on the electoral front. Similarly, he's now launching his Har Ghar Nal Se Jal scheme with a much greater energy and emphasis. And also you see a new publicity campaign with very catchy new videos and jingles, and all these are short and very social media friendly, because he knows that Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. are sort of the cheap, almost free mediums that people of the kind, that is the vast multitudes in the Hindi heartland who vote for him, they watch and they read. Now, polarization in Pulwama helped Modi and Shah win 2019. They know this time that something like that may not be easily available, because with the new China reality, Chinese sitting in East Ladakh and generally letting it be known that Pakistan is their protectorate, you cannot go out and start something with Pakistan, punish them, and close it by declaring victory. The Chinese have taken away that option. That is what also led to Modi government accepting that ceasefire on the line of control, which actually is a good idea. And it's a good thing that the ceasefire is holding right now, although there are some dangers to it. You can see an article by Khalid Shah on the print today, which says that some of the recent infiltration efforts are now threatening this ceasefire. Nevertheless, there is a ceasefire in Pakistan, and it would suit India's interest that no escalation takes place. And I do not think that unless the issue with China is settled, and it doesn't look like it will be settled soon, Modi government can today count on that Pulwama kind of a last-minute patriotic, nationalistic surge to get a large majority. They have to work on other things. So at this point, it's quite evident that things like Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, Swachh Bharat Part 2, new health plan, and some more freebies, these will be the vehicles for their election campaign in 2024. So they are setting it all up. They are not being complacent. Now, they are also strengthened by the fact that nobody from the opposition is questioning them. No opposition leaders are going to the countryside and checking out how exactly are these schemes being delivered. Modi and Shah know that last time, while Pulwama, patriotism, etc., Balakot, all of that helped them, but those things helped them to give them that last stage surge. But on the ground, what had worked for them was very good, efficient delivery of their welfare schemes. That is LPG, Ujjwala, Mudra loans, rural housing, Gramavas Yojana, and toilets. Because they rule India by sweeping the Hindi heartland. In the Hindi heartland, they know that voter expectations are minimal. Nobody is expecting your growth to go to 10%, huge airports to be built, some big software parks to be built. People think, "Mereko kuch mila ke nahi mila," right? For a long time, people have got nothing, and even if the freebies came, or okay, freebies may be the wrong word, even if welfare came, it came with too many strings and with too much bureaucracy attached, and there was too much intermediation and too much leakage and pilferage and too much friction in the system. In these schemes, that friction wasn't there, so that worked for Modi government also. Today, it looks like that is the main thing they are left with. If that is the main thing they are left with, if they can't be sure of that last stage nationalistic surge, vis-a-vis something starting with Pakistan and being closed with a victory, then this is their key plank. key election plan. Is the opposition today challenging them on that plan? A healthy opposition would have been going from village to village, looking at how well these schemes are being delivered, finding people who have a grievance, finding cases of failure, compiling them, going to court, going to the media, holding press conferences, saying, see, I have this list of, in a country of so many tens of crores, you can find a few thousand cases, individual cases, where the scheme has gone wrong. You can have those lists, you can articulate those voices, you can also amplify those voices, but they are doing nothing of the sort. They've outsourced all of this work to the poor, beleaguered media. And even when the media does something, for example, the Indian Express carried this wonderful series on some irregularities or what looked like irregularities in the water supply scheme in Bihar. Nothing happened with the opposition. Opposition made no campaign of it. So in fact, that story died with the last editorial on this subject in the paper itself. Imagine if Nitish Kumar was a chief minister in an RJD Congress government. If this was an RJD Congress JDU government and Nitish Kumar was chief minister and BJP was the opposition, what would BJP have made of that story in the Indian Express? BJP would have tried to. I'm not saying they would have succeeded in doing it because Nitish Kumar also has a reputation, but they would have definitely tried their damnedest to turn this into a Chara Ghotala for Nitish Kumar or into what the fodder scam was for Lalu Yadav. They would have made it the equivalent of the fodder scam for Nitish Kumar. At least they would have tried. But today the opposition has tried no such thing. Now that I've come to this stage in this column, you might say, Arey, Shekhar Gupta, all that you're saying is making the same point that politics is frozen, that Narendra Modi is unchallengeable, he is unassailable. Phir baki story kya hai? But you know, that is the reason I said early on that I lift the layers from this politics. I look under the frozen surface of this glacial lake and tell you what's underneath it. And when you lift that, then you can see that I am not contradicting myself. Another couple of months and a full-fledged campaigning will be on in 5 states. Now, the big one there, the elephant in the room, that is Uttar Pradesh. If the BJP loses it or doesn't win it big time, if it wins it narrowly, what will happen then is that this will break the BJP's momentum going up to 2024. Because a lot of people will think, Arey, these people are not unbeatable, particularly in the Hindi heartland. Suppose Samajwadi Party even gets 120, 130 seats in Uttar Pradesh, then it would feel that they have a presence, it will have people working, because after all, parties also have workers when they have some success. So that can change the picture going up to 2024. In fact, if the BJP loses in Uttar Pradesh, it will be like suddenly you are cantering along in the 42nd, 43rd over and you lose 4 wickets in a heap in 2 overs. So it's a mini collapse. A UP loss will be a bit like that. Now the BJP may not care about the other states, but we also forget something significant, because who cares about a mere municipality? But remember, BMC or Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation is not a mere municipality. It is a very powerful municipality with a budget greater than many of India's states. And this is where you get a sense of who is in the ascendant in Maharashtra. Now, Maharashtra is the second most important state in India politically. It sends 48 MPs to National Parliament after Uttar Pradesh's 80. Now, if Shiv Sena with its friends, whether they contest together or separately or whatever, if Shiv Sena is able to win BMC, if it's able to retain BMC, that will put the wind in their sails. That will put the wind in Shiv Sena's and MVA's, Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi's sails, and that will again make the BJP insecure going up to 2024. So that will be like you've lost 1 more wicket, say in the 45th over. So now you are really worrying, because Maharashtra is a very big state. Unless the BJP maxes out the Hindi heartland, that is UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Jharkhand, and Maharashtra and Gujarat, it's impossible for them to get a majority in the country. So that will worry them even more. On the other hand, if BJP is able to wrest BMC away from Shiv Sena and its allies, that will convince the BJP that they have a chance of regaining Maharashtra in spite of the fact that they lost their stalwart ally, the Shiv Sena, and that is now contesting against them. So once again, that could be a turning point, and that could bring about a complete defreeze in the situation. And if that combines with UP, that defreeze becomes even stronger and even more significant. So none of the other states would bother the BJP so much. BJP also doesn't care so much about Punjab because its prospects in Punjab are very, very insignificant. Unless Amrinder Singh were to join them and they were to become, with him, a kind of a formidable force there. They're playing second fiddle to him, because if at all, he'll be the force in Punjab. But if the Congress leadership wins Punjab again, the drastic changes and purges that Rahul Gandhi is carrying out in his own party, they will find legitimacy and also adulation. Because you know what? Winner takes all in hard politics. Chadhte suraj ko sab salam karte hain. Everybody goes with the winner. Everybody salutes the rising sun. So if Rahul Gandhi is able to win Punjab in spite of whatever has happened, it will strengthen him. It will again give the Congress party a second win. Now, who takes the Congress party seriously? You might ask me, why are you taking the Congress party so seriously? Congress party is not finishing. The BJP takes the Congress party very seriously, because you will see that in all their election campaigns, BJP leaders, even in states where Congress party is nothing but a cipher, Uttar Pradesh, right? Jammu and Kashmir, in all those states, BJP leaders, their primary target of attack is the Congress party, because they know that Congress still owns that 20% of the core vote. 20% becomes 30%, BJP can't get a majority. Also, Congress is the only party that can build and lead a credible coalition to challenge the BJP. All third front, fourth front, en passant, BJP can take care of. So they take the Congress party very, very seriously. Now, however unlikely it may look right now, if the Congress wins Punjab, then Rahul Gandhi will earn one thing that he's never had, which is a big electoral victory with his name on it, with his mark on it. Now you might say elections in the state of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh in 2018, but those did not have his stamp on them. Those were also states where BJP was facing a long incumbency, and after that the loss of Madhya Pradesh has sobered that a little bit. But in my book, the one achievement, electoral achievement on his CV was the 21 seats that the party won under his leadership in Uttar Pradesh in Lok Sabha in 2009. Because suddenly Congress came back from the dead in that state, and it gave everybody the feeling that Rahul Gandhi had the leadership to rouse young people, because these were his candidates who had won in Uttar Pradesh. But that he's not been able to repeat anywhere. But if he wins Punjab now, after all the disruptive stuff that he's done with his own party, getting rid of the old guard like his grandmother had done in 1969, then he will rise as a leader, and Congress party will then get a new eminence and respect among the others. But it's a big if. At the same time, if the Congress party does succeed in its persistent and valiant effort to lose Punjab, right now it's been trying very hard to lose Punjab, and then it continues to fragment with all these leaders, older leaders leaving, it could finish that party. Because the party in Madhya Pradesh is already greatly weakened, the Congress party, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh are both rocking under the turbulence of its own creation, self-inflicted turbulence. For the BJP then, in the final lap to 2024, it will be like 2 catches dropped by the opposition in the 46th over. If you think I'm overdoing mixing cricket and politics, you can probably blame on the fact that as I write this, I've also been watching the IPL match. In fact, KKR versus PBKS, Punjab versus Kolkata. So maybe that influences my mind. So I might as well push the envelope. Let us see Let us see a political party as a franchise, like an IPL franchise, like a sporting franchise. So suppose a political party is a franchise. So franchise with the most money gets the best players, the best coaches, the best trainers, the best facilities, right? The best sponsors, the best everything. The BJP is that because they have the most money, right? To begin with, without a doubt, by a factor of God knows how many X, they have the most money, right? In cricketing terms, I could just say Mumbai Indians. So you understand that. But what if a franchise keeps losing, is faction-ridden and leaves its fans disillusioned and sponsors frustrated all the time? Then all three, the players, the fans, the sponsors, they start looking elsewhere because they have to find some place else because they can't continue with this franchise. In fact, in this IPL, one particular team does look like going that way, but I will not mention its name because the league is still on. I don't want to dishearten them, and I particularly like them because I liked the pink of their uniform. So see, I didn't tell you what the team is. So this, the opposition politics, is exactly what is on the boil now. However, the implications of this boiling over are not limited only to the opposition. How this ends up would also have a great impact on the future of Narendra Modi, Amit Shah and their BJP and their strategy. And that is the reason they still cannot take 2024 for granted, and they are not the types to take any election for granted. See how seriously they are fighting this by-election against Mamata Banerjee in Bhabanipur. They take every election as their last battle, last decisive battle. So they are not taking it lightly, but they are also watching this opposition situation very carefully because the implications of what happens there are not going to be confined to the opposition. They will mostly matter for the party which has the most to lose, which is the BJP, or the most to gain, depending on how things turn out. Now, political ambition in any case never freezes. Forget the BJP. Even its bitterest adversaries are now looking at the Congress party to steal its players, sponsors, fans, which means looking for defectors in the BJP. So if you look at BJP's opponents right now, or Modi's opponents right now in our politics, there is no one more determined and more successful at this point than Mamata Banerjee. And what is Mamata Banerjee doing? She is basically swallowing her former party, one small state after another small state. So it was Tripura yesterday, it is Goa today. You know, the former Congress Chief Minister Luisinho Falero has joined TMC, and looks like it might be Meghalaya tomorrow. So one small state after the other, TMC is taking away Congress's existing strength in these states, and this can just grow. And we don't know what will happen if Punjab continues to fall apart. What Amrinder Singh does, we don't know. What this group of 23 would do, and this group of 23 is now enlarging. More and more people are joining it now. So once again, that is something that needs to be watched very carefully. Now, it's incredible also, I mean, ironically, how much the opposition is targeting its own rather than attack the BJP, because they think the BJP is right now too difficult to attack. You can't take anybody or anything from the BJP. First of all, self-preservation, and then to see what you can consolidate by finding bigger losers among yourselves. So there is also a big tussle among the also-rans of national politics. They are not all losers in their states. And that is why, just as I explained to you, TMC getting people out of the Congress party, there is also the ridiculous spectacle of fratricide, where Congress is taking people from the left, see Kanhaiya Kumar from CPI, and the left is taking people from the Congress. See what's happening in Kerala. So this tamasha is also going on at the same time. Now, since I still insist, I conclude this column also on a note of cricket, or with the cricketing comparison. This brings back to me the brilliant line spoken, I think, by John Orlett. I hope Ram Guha or somebody will correct me if it's John Orlett or not. I think he said in 1973 at Lords, when India were 42 all out, and Eknath Solkar was batting at 30 for 7 or something, and he hit a 6, and then India got all out for 42. So John Orlett had then said that Eknath Solkar's hooked 6 of Chris Old was the final act of absurdity in that disaster. So if the opposition does go the way of that disaster of 42 all out, as frankly the Congress was in 2014, then this stealing of each other's people between Congress and the left will be the equivalent of that 6 that Eknath Solkar hooked off Chris Old in a score of 42 all out.